Everyone needs help sometimes, and just because you're working on the dark side while potentially being a criminal genius doesn't mean that you are excluded. Even the villains sometimes need help, a second in command, or just someone to cheer them on from the sidelines, or maybe even someone more expendable. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Today we're going to be looking at some sidekicks who belong to some of the most heinous characters in comics, as we count down the top 10 supervillain sidekicks you've never heard of. While some supervillain sidekicks are there for life and even end up becoming a supervillain in their own right, or maybe even turning to a life of heroism, not all of them can live on. And it's time for us to look back at some of the sidekicks you may have forgotten. If you love learning about some of the lesser known sidekicks in the wide world of comics, click over here to open this video about superhero sidekicks you've never heard of. I had a lot of fun writing and filming that video with my co-host Jack, and I hope you also enjoy it too. Also, be sure to stick around to the end of this list where I will have some bonus content coming your way. Alright, now let's get counting. Number 10. Dextar. For those not familiar with Dextar, get ready because this little furball might be one of my favorite lanterns, at least my favorite red lantern. Dextar was originally named Dexter and was just your average house cat. One day, however, his owner was brutally murdered and he himself was tossed into a bag and into a river. Dexter was of course frightened and sad, but he also found within himself a fierce rage, an anger so intense that Atrocitus felt his rage and reached out to him, offering him a place among the Red Lanterns. That day, Dexter became the ferocious space kitty known as Dextar. While he has since become his own character, originally he was very much the sidekick of his beloved mentor, Atrocitus. Number 9. Hope Taeya. You might be familiar with Lex Luthor's sidekicks Mercy Graves, but did you know he also had another bodyguard and sidekick as well? Her name was Hope Taeya. Hope was first introduced in Adventures of Superman issue 573. When Lex became president of the United States, however, and failed to prevent an invasion, she decided to turn against him. When he realized that Hope was the leak and had told some shady stories about him to the Daily Planet, Lex Luthor had her secretly kidnapped and imprisoned. He tortured her and lobotomized her before Superman could manage to rescue her. Number 8. Black Swan. Black Swan is Yabit Umanturu, an alien from the alternate Earth of 1365. After being manipulated by Rabba Malal, known to her as the Great Destroyer, Black Swan set out to regrow her family, carrying with her their DNA and brain scans in order to do so. As she looked for a new world to rebuild her life on, she ended up on the Earth of Reality 616, attempting to convince others to destroy their Earths in order to avoid the disaster that was the incursion of worlds. Following the events on Battleworld and the whole rebuilding of Earth 616 and the multiverse, Black Swan found herself allied with Hela, who at the time was working with Thanos. From there, she ended up joining the Black Order, which would later be reformed. Number 7. The Walrus. Does anyone remember the Wonderland Gang, or just me? This was a gang that villains Tweedledee and Tweedledum led, composed of a collection of Wonderland-inspired characters. The Walrus became one of them. Just like many of the other members of the gang, he was pretty useless as a villain. The Walrus's real name was Mo Blum, and to fight against the heroes who would oppose his leader's criminal ways, he would fight using a tusked mask that he wore on his face. He had no superpowers to speak of, just that sweet, sweet mask that, as you can expect, was not really as effective as I'm sure he'd hoped it would be. Number 6. Supergiant. Supergiant was one of the members of the Black Order that we did not get to see join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and almost seemingly as part of her being cut out of being represented in the film, she also then died in the comics during the events of No Surrender. Not sure why everyone was hating on Supergiant. The issue of Avengers in which she died, Legacy number 680, was released in February of 2018, while Infinity War came out in April of 2018. She was a telepath who could easily unlock information or secrets within someone's mind. Perhaps she was simply too powerful for her own good, and that's what led to her being killed in the comics and kind of erased from existence in regards to the MCU. Still, I would like justice for Supergiant. Bring her back! Number 5. Quintets. The Quintets were Harley's gang that she put together after striking out on her own, separate from the Joker. She got them all matching button-down shirts that kinda remind me of bowling shirts, to be honest, with their names embroidered on the front. And she even held auditions when putting her gang together, choosing from a few old favorites and former goons of the Jokers, as well as some new yet lovable goons. They only lasted a few issues, but the Quintets were pretty fun while they lasted, and they helped give Harley some of the confidence she was looking for in regards to starting to build her own brand and criminal empire. The original team included Buster, Louis LeBeau, Kenny and Nyx Two-Bear, and Lester Wilde. Though Lester was pretty useless. He fancied himself a Joker look-alike and imagined that Harley was in love with him, but he died on the team's very first mission. He also had literally no skills. Number 4. Gustav Hoftman. Gustav Hoftman was a scientist who originally was in Adolf Hitler and Red Skull's employ. However, he found himself kidnapped and forced to work for Dr. Doom later on in his life. Surprisingly, he actually found a lot of joy in his work as one of Doom's minions. Unfortunately, he didn't last too long. When the Fantastic Four infiltrated Doom's castle, Victor sent Gustav after them. Gustav took a flamethrower for the job, thinking it would be the best weapon against the heroic team. Dr. Doom, however, disagreed, worried for his priceless artwork which hung in the castle. In response to Gustav's poor choice, Doom killed him using a sonic device, and oddly enough actually ended up letting the FF go just immediately after that. Gustav was survived by his brother Gert, who then took his place as Doom's new mad scientist minion. I feel like that would be an awkward conversation. Your brother, I just killed him. Do you want to become my new mad scientist minion? I'd be like, no, I'm not. No, I don't want to die. Number 3. Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle was Poison Ivy's young protege and sidekick who appeared alongside some of the other Super Foes sidekicks in the original Super Friends in issue number 1. There, Poison Ivy was seen instructing Honeysuckle on how to climb, or more chastising her for wasting time chatting away. More speed and less talk, Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle looked pretty cute and also appears in the following issue of Super Friends, but we haven't really seen her since. It's also implied that there was some sort of competition where these youngsters auditioned to become supervillains in training. Bizarre. When I grow up, I want to be a supervillain too. Actually, that is true. I do want to be a supervillain. I would love to be Poison Ivy's protege. Number 2. Nasty Boys. People may remember the Marauders. It's hard not to, considering that they were the ones responsible behind the death of so many Morlocks. Poor Morlocks. And now, of course, the Marauders name has been redeemed by Captain Kate's new team of Marauders, who travel about working for the Hellfire Trading Company and freeing oppressed mutants around the world, helping them travel safely to the mutant nation of Krakoa. But while everyone has been talking about the Marauders on and on, Mr. Sinister decided afterward to create a new villainous sidekick gang, the Nasty Boys. Oh my! That's how I always read Sinister, by the way, in my head. I read him as like this hoity-toity, overly extravagant British man. That's my Nathaniel Essex. The Nasty Boys only lasted a few issues, but goodness, what a name and what a team. The team made their last appearance in Uncanny X-Men from 2019, not to be confused with the 2019 X-Men series. There's Uncanny X-Men and then there's X-Men. I know, it's confusing. We have X-Men 2019, Uncanny X-Men 2019, but they're separate. But the Nasty Boys were actually a product of the 90s. I mean, with a name like that, are you surprised? Number 1. Gaggy. Despite only appearing in a few issues, Gaggy quickly became a fan favorite. He first appeared in Batman issue 186 as the Joker's sidekick. Gaggy was a short entertainer and comedian that the Joker mainly kept around for, well, entertainment. However, despite how entertaining Gaggy was, he was not as useful as some of Joker's other henchmen, and ended up being replaced by Harley Quinn, who was also known for being Joker's girlfriend. Jealous of Harley, it was later revealed in Gotham City Sirens that Gaggy actually attempted to get rid of her, seeking revenge on the sidekick that had replaced him, but ultimately he failed, due to the interference of the other Sirens, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy. Gaggy's full name is Gagsworth A. Gagsworthy, and he recently reappeared once more in The Three Jokers book number 1, proving that although he may be lesser known, he has not been forgotten. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. Who are some of your favorite supervillain sidekicks? Is there any one sidekick that you feel was left out of this obscure supervillain sidekick list whom you love? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Dark Spider-Man Villains Part 2. Subscribe to me for good luck, writes TBH, Spider-Man has the best villains in all of Marvel Comics, movies, and video games. Wow. I would sort of agree with that. I've always actually felt that Spider-Man's rogues gallery is a lot like Batman's. He has both some of the best and some of the worst villains around. And to me, those villains that are even more silly make him, well, even better. But where he ones up Batman mayhaps is with the Sinister Six. Now that's a villain team up that I'm eagerly awaiting to see appear in a movie. John Berg writes, honestly, if I could choose any power, it would be to be like Sandman. I do think turning to sand is pretty powerful, both offensively and defensively, and it could be useful for a variety of things as well, so I can see why you'd pick that. Sunstar agrees, Kingpin deserves his slot on this list with his diabolical plans. Dr. Octopus is one of my fave Spidey villains. I agree, Kingpin is definitely one of the darkest villains out there, just in general, whether it be with Spider-Man or Daredevil. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and feel shouted out in a future list. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube. Number 4. Gustav Hoftman. Hoftman. I think he's German. Gustav. Number 2. Nasty Boys. The Nasty Boys, they just make me laugh every time I say their name.